My book is How to Enslave the Planet.
I have never heard of it. Sorry, I didn't know you were
It's pretty
writing a
good.
book.
I
That's great, man.
I published it back in October, before the
Dude,
planet was enslaved.
do you have a copy?
No,
Do you really not have a copy?
no, I don't.
Oh man, I got my copy back.
Yeah.
So I was going to
Oh, good.
suggest you do something like this, and then I do something like this.
Ah, be
Hey,
awesome.
thanks,
That'd be
man.
good.
Anyway, but that's not going to work now because the author
No,
does not have a copy of his own book. Anyway, I have it here.
it's correct. I cannot afford a copy of my book.
It's expensive, man. But you would get the royalties, so you just gotta save up. Tell me about your book,
Yeah,
bro. I've never read it. I just don't really care that much.
it's How to Enslave the Planet. Literally, that's the. If you wanted to enslave the planet, you read that book, you get the play-by-play. The stuff that's happening, hey, the stuff that's happening in the world today is the later chapters of that book,
Okay.
unfortunately.
How
Yeah,
far down that road?
pandemic-wise.
How far down the road that you spell out in this book do you think we are?
Okay, so I give a like an enslavement rating in that book.
Mm.
So the enslavement rating equals how much of a person's labor is owned by somebody else.
Okay.
Um, and at this point, regarding the world, I would say it's about 40% enslaved, somewhere around there.
Okay. Um, you made a very strong case, and it really changed my mind on some things. But as I was thinking about like how far are we really down this road? How much further can it go? Where would you put us right now on like an enslavement rating? Is it 1 to 10?
I mean, it's tough. You have to, like, is it America or is it the world or is it us?
Let's say America.
It's interesting with taxes. You make your money and then like 30% of it goes to the government right away. So 30% of the work that you do is for somebody else. So you are 30% enslaved. That's the definition they use, right?
Oh, okay.
So when people say slaves, and this is part of the distraction, I think. When people say slaves, when you learn about slaves, they think about American black slaves in the 1900s, right? I
Colonial
think,
slavery, right?
pre-Civil War, right? And they were 100% slaves. All they did was for somebody else, and they got essentially nothing in return, just the bare minimums to maintain the slaves, such as living quarters, right?
Okay. And food.
And they teach you that as the extreme and say that's slavery. So anything less than that is freedom, is
Okay.
what they're saying. So on the other hand, there's freedom, which is when somebody owns all of their own labor. They do whatever they do, they get to keep 100% of. I don't know who I could say is entirely free, but there are people, right? Like there's people that don't pay taxes. There's people that don't even have jobs and they survive and they work and they make money. And
Yeah.
I don't know, there's people like that. And then anywhere between that is a scale between slavery and freedom. Slavery being 100% owned and freedom being 100% unowned. And then
Okay.
anywhere else, it's like how much freedom and how much slavery. So I say if 30% of your money goes to the government right away, you're probably a 30% slave.
But Brian, you're forgetting about the 6% that goes to your money or that goes to the government based on what you buy.
And then there's regulation, there's import costs, and there's export costs. So really, it gets up to like 50%. And I think you have a very good point there. It's probably more like 50, maybe even 60%.
Hold on, but Brian, you're forgetting that after you buy the stuff that you paid sales tax on with the money that you paid income tax on, you pay property tax. I mean, if the government knows that you have it. So you're forgetting about that
Yeah,
tax.
yeah, right. I did. I mean, in this conversation, I did forget about that. I actually talked about it in the book, but yeah, that's true. And then the worst form is the financial system itself, and just pumping and printing more money and devaluing our currency further and further. So
Yeah,
the money that you have, that's why it seems like you're getting a raise, but you're actually earning less in buying power.
right. So we just had this stimulus check thing. I received my $1,200 And I know a lot of
Yeah.
other people who received their $1,200, and that's because I was part of the system enough to get it, right? Our
Yeah.
national debt went up by, what was the total? What did the total end up being for that stimulus package?
Some That one stimulus package was about $2 trillion, but altogether it was about $6 trillion
Okay.
for the
So
combination.
so $6 trillion essentially rose our national debt by about what, 20%? I mean 25% of what we had we
Uh,
took on. We were sitting at about
Probably about
24 trillion,
30%.
right?
Yeah, maybe 25.
Okay, so we went from 24 trillion to 30 trillion. Now, that doesn't relate exactly right away to the value of our money. The price raise of products, it takes it a while to catch up with national debt, but it always catches up. And that's why we're always seeing inflation, inflation, inflation.
Right.
So,
Hmm.
I think one of the things that I talk to people about pretty often, I try to open people's eyes to, is like, I first of all, I'll ask people the question, where do you think that money comes from? Do you know what the number one
Hmm.
answer is?
The government.
Taxes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're one step further, right? So like the worst answer, the government. So at least when they first think of it, they think like, "Oh, that's just tax money." And then when I tell them it's not tax money, we haven't paid that much into taxes in the last 2 years as a country. So it's not tax money.
Right.
That money is just being printed by people
Right.
who are, for whatever reason, allowed to just print more money that doesn't have any value behind it. Now, if you and I,
Hmm.
Mr. and Mrs. John and Jane Q. Public, print the same money in the same way, we go away for a long, long time. So it's illegal for us, legal for them, and then they get to use it. So and this is the last kind of question with that line. It's like, where does the value for that new money come from? And people have no idea. Most people have no idea. Do you know?
Yeah.
Where does it come
All
from?
right. So value, that money isn't value. Money doesn't have value. Money is just paper or it's numbers in a computer.
Right.
Money inherently doesn't have value. It's only a representation of productivity, right? So
Right.
this is value that a person invests. They put time into doing. We're creating this video. It has some value. People go to work. They create things. They give services, products, and there's the gross domestic national product, which is like what everybody in the country will like put together. It's the value.
Of
It's
of
put
right.
in
It's the value
dollars.
of all of the goods and services rendered.
Right. Okay. So then, so that's a value, and it's a set value. It's not really a number, but it can be represented as a number by money,
Hmm.
right? So you could say all that labor is worth $1 million, and then kind of chop it up based on where that value was. Or you
Right.
could say it was $10 million, and then everyone has 10 times more money, right?
Right.
So let's say there's $10 million. And this is very, very low, but there's $10 million for all the labor in the world, or all the labor in the country, maybe. And then the government prints out another $10 million. So now there's $20 million. Suddenly, the money, which is supposed to store the value of labor, that ratio of labor to money is in half. So when we got that $1,200, our spending power dropped by probably 10 to 15%. I mean, I don't know, that might be pretty steep, but
So
it dropped. So when we got $1,200, we actually received the buying power of about $900 or $1,000. And because that $2 trillion, only a small portion of that $2 trillion went to the people, the rest of it went to big corporations and rich people. So we, as a country, took on about $8,000 of debt in order to get
per person,
$1,200
right.
cash that turned, because of the influx of cash, turns into about $1,000 of spending power.
Right. This is the classic magic trick that every politician pulls. They come in, they've got this campaign, they want to win their campaign. So they say, we're going to lower taxes and we're going to increase programs. And for some reason, people don't stop to think, how are we going to get more and pay less? Right? Because that's not how it works ever, ever, ever. But they buy it because they think that this person knows something about economics that they don't know. Like the fundamentals are so much different at a high level And really, it's one difference. It's the ability to use a printer to create something that you can spend versus the insistence to use your brain or your body or your time creating value to earn something that you can spend. So
right. So printing isn't earning.
right, yeah. So it's this asymmetry of ability to get new wealth, right? The problem is all those new dollars that get printed. Let's say they're, for the ease of math's sake, in a standard equation, let's say that X is the entire GDP, M is the entire money supply. Okay? X should and the original equation is X equals M, right? That's how it started.
Okay.
If you have the ability to double the money supply, so now it's X equals M times 2. Okay? Generally, to make that happen, you would have to go X times 2 equals M times 2. But they can unbalance this equation and just say, well, now X equals M times 2. So if you want to rebalance that, you divide M by 2, you divide M times 2 by 2, and you divide X by 2. So, and that is really how it works. The value that they're using to do all the things that you're not voting on comes out from under the value of the dollars that you have in the bank. But because you have the same number of dollars in the bank, you're happy. And, oh, guess what? I have $1,200 more dollars in the bank now. I'm super happy. Government's doing great, right? That $1,200 goes away, and now your money is worth 25% less than it was. So the next time you spend $4,800, you're at zero. And the next $1,200 you spend after that, you're at negative 25%. It's not great. You know, and what are we going to do? Say, I almost wanted to take this principled stand. Like, my check comes in the mail, and I just say, I don't want it.
It's not bad, actually. I can do better. So let's do a couple things. So first of all, let's simplify this and say you live in a house that has 5 people. And they each do close to the amount of same work, but one does a little bit more and one does maybe a little bit less. And everybody knows that, and we all agree, and we create our own money system, okay? So I got a printer, I'm pretty smart, and I group my 5 people together and say, hey, this is going to be a whole lot easier if I just make this money system. Here's $100, and and you get 20, agrees. You get 20, you get 20, you get 22 because you work a little harder. You get 18, right? Now, if we were to invite a 6th person into our system,
our economy,
then
right.
the value of his work, is the labor, just anything that he contributes, it would be appropriate for me to add that amount of money to the money supply. So now I'm going to put $120 out there. I'm going to print another $20, and I'm going to pay him for that. Okay, and we still even.
Yeah.
So however, if I get an idea that, hey, I can just print another $20 and I can spend that myself, right? I'm going to print $20, and then suddenly I'm rich. I have twice as much as everybody else does. Mm-hmm. In fact, I could use that money to bribe these other guys and get what I want. But eventually, it'll boil back down. It'll all settle, and now your labor that was worth $20 is now worth $22, right? Mm-hmm. Which sounds like a good thing. Like, oh, inflation, my house is worth more, and I'm making more money, right? Sounds like a good thing. But what costs $20 now costs $22. Right. That's the other side of inflation. You make more, but you have to pay more.
Yeah.
Now, in an ideal society like that, the amount of labor and the amount of money goes up and everybody's fair, right? But this particular situation is so giant and so complex and so confusing, we can't even explain it to other people, that these guys just print, and they keep it and they spend it on whatever they want, and we don't even notice, right? I mean, the money supply has probably jumped up 2 or 3 times in the last 20 years, while the wages have gone up about 50% probably.
Yeah, and that might be nationwide. That might be close. There are a lot of places that still have a $7.50 minimum wage.
Right.
So,
and I just want to be extra clear that I am totally making up those statistics. I do not know what they are. But
okay, yeah.
I will look them up.
This book, How to Enslave the Planet. First of all, dude, I want to make this into an audiobook.
Deal.
For
110%
of the cut.
Oh, no.
You'll get famous, dude. Damn. Okay, so how much further down this road of enslavement can we go? How much worse could it get, and how long, and what would it take to get there?
So this is where the conversation is going to take a dark turn, because the vision that I have that I'm really afraid about is a world in which all the information is controlled. So when a person is born, they are taught what to believe and think, and the certain social cultural standards of slavery are taught to them by like age 5. Then they go to school, and then the school sets them up and teaches them that all the slavery, you don't deserve any of your labor. Kids don't know any better, right? If you were born into that world, it's like a fish being born in water, right? If you're born into that world of slavery, you're not going to know anything different. You won't even know what freedom is. In fact, they could tell you that's freedom, and you would believe that that's what you're experiencing. That's already going on now, right? But what I fear is a world that's completely enslaved, where a very small elite class owns all the labor of the world, and kids from birth and for the rest of their lives are convinced and told and taught that all of that's completely normal and nothing else could ever possibly exist or work. There's nothing else wrong, right? And that's kind of where you get what's going on now. It's like some of that programming you can see now, but there's people like us that are trying to counterbalance that out. This is a war for the narrative, for sure.
Yeah.
So we're trying to balance that out. We're trying to speak some truth and trying to get the word out and say, hey, guys, think for yourselves. You know, the freedom is a good thing, and you can't believe everything you hear on TV, right? But if they controlled all of the information from birth till death, people like you and me, we wouldn't be around to counterbalance the narrative, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We'd be so few and far between that they would just eliminate us immediately, and they get full control. Like, there's a point where I believe the control can become so complete over a person, over an information that a person gets over his lifetime, and the narrative can be so controlled and dissension squashed out so quickly that planetary enslavement would be permanent, and all of humanity would be slaves for the rest of eternity. And that's what I'm fighting at. I'm fighting for the future of humanity.
So what is something that we can do to keep ourselves from being enslaved?
Good question.
Or let's say to make ourselves more free.
All right. Well, how about this one? This is a great example. All the problems going on right now with the protests and coronavirus and all this stuff, this is a result of group identity. We lost the individuals. There's no individual responsibility anymore, I think. So it's like, why are we mad that Chauvin killed George Floyd? Because he's white and he's black. Or it's because he's a cop and he's a citizen. Probably because he's a cop and he's black. But mostly because he's a white cop and he's black.
So people who are tired of police oppression are mad because a police killed a civilian because of unjust, something that we see as unjust. A lot of black people are mad because another white person killed another black person and is still not in custody. And I saw something this morning. It was just a meme that said, if you think things are bad now, wait till the verdict comes back not guilty. And that's a scary idea.
If you look at it like a white cop kills a black person, then all white cops are guilty and all black people are victims. And that doesn't make any sense. That's not the reality. The world is made up of individuals. Individuals are guilty. Groups aren't guilty, right? So if you identify as a group, then this individual that's guilty shares that guilt with everybody else in the group, which means that everybody that's innocent takes on some of that guilt. That guy shares that guilt with everybody else because it's a group that's guilty and it's a group that's victimized. And if you suggest otherwise, you're a goddamn racist, which is really strange to me. Group identity shares victimization and it shares guilt. And that's not right. I'm not guilty because I'm white, and you're not guilty because you're white, and this other guy isn't guilty because he's a cop. Okay? Every individual needs to be held to the same standards of society,
right.
The exact same. And anything otherwise, if you're going to say that different people deserve different treatment because of race, that's racist. And I cannot tell you how many arguments I get into that say that I'm the racist because I want to treat everybody equally and hold everybody to the same standard.
That is bizarre. It's a little bit more nuanced than that with this, but not all that much. I think that pretty well describes things. What we do have here is we've got one cop who did the deed, and we've got one victim who died. Okay, it's drastic. But then we've got cops who were standing around permitting it, allowing it to happen, protecting the murderer from the people who were standing around, who, if they hadn't been there, they might have just kicked this guy's ass, right? They may have they may have held him accountable personally, but they couldn't because there were people protecting this crime while it was happening. On another level,
maybe, I mean, like, well,
yeah, maybe. And
I mean, those are really strong accusations. Hypothetically, they could have kicked his ass.
Hypothetically,
I'm not going to hold anybody guilty for that.
But what I saw was that the cops were outnumbered. I'm really disappointed when I see people holding a camera. You know, there's something terrible happening, and I see somebody. You know, I'm like watching this video. Most people are not thinking about this guy right here, who is just taping it, right? And I mean, I know that can make a difference, but at some point, can you drop the camera and take some action instead? It's not good enough to just be a spectator to somebody's murder, you know, so that other people can be a spectator to their murder. There were enough people there.
The answer is no.
The answer to what is no?
You can't do anything about it. There's 4 guys with guns that are protected by the U.S. government, and they have backup.
I disagree completely.
What you need to change is the narrative. If you want to change it, you have to go to the source.
Okay, so you think it's best to stand there with a camera?
Why did that happen?
Do you think it's best to stand there with a camera?
It depends on the situation. So it's like what kind of different versus what type of risk you are going to take on.
Okay.
Right? And filming is very low risk, and it's very big difference because it changes the narrative.
Yeah, okay. But if that's all we do, is show how disproportional the system is and how like much control some people have versus how little control other people have, and we just keep showing it and showing it and showing it and showing it and showing it. What it reminds me of is the videos of World War II, Nazi soldiers just walking down a line of people waiting to be shot in the head, and they know it's coming and they do nothing. That's what I'm wondering. Like, at what point do you say, well, I'm gonna die anyway, I might as well make it a little harder to be a Nazi soldier? I might as well make it a little harder, a little less safe to be that kind of oppressor. At some point, you gotta fight.
Absolutely, and I think that that's when you are personally infringed upon. Okay, so let me ask you this: what would you have done in that situation?
If I was behind the camera,
I
probably would have taken a run at him. I probably would have died. I know, man.
And you would have died, and then you would have been the bad guy. I mean, maybe the cops would have been the bad guy. Maybe someone catches it on film. Maybe people talk about it. All these? I don't really feel like the protests are making that much of a difference in a positive direction, anyway.
Right. Well, they're also being bastardized by people setting bricks outside of glass buildings. You know, props for a riot. You know, to turn a protest that has a point into a riot that is chaos.
The protests, what are they going for? Like, what are they protesting?
I think the main point for me when I'm watching the protests is that there are a lot of people who are getting together and they're showing solidarity for each other. Okay, that's the best thing that's happening with this. And the more diverse that the protests are, the better. And there's something about that video of the guy from, I think it was Flint, the sheriff from Flint, who said, hey, we're taking off our helmets, we're dropping our batons, we're going to march with you guys because we're against this as well. So you've added this big dynamic to the group. You know, you've really diversified that group. Now it's not just citizens, not just civilians, but it's also cops who are standing up against the system that made Derek Chauvin possible.
So when do they end?
When did the protests end?
Mm.
Dude, I'm not saying that they're right on point and laser focused. I think they need to get right on point. I think they need to get on the same page, and I think they need to have if there was a better focus, and also if the protests were protected by the protesters against the people who would incite a riot, which is starting to happen. We are starting to see that the protesters are not standing for like the people who are trying to incite a riot. And I think that's a very positive thing. So
I've seen some of that, but I don't see much solidarity actually. I mean, what's the solidarity? Is it Americans, or is it liberals, or is it black people?
I think it's a couple categories. I think it's black people, and I think it's civilians. I think it's the people, again, like with that system of like there's an oppressor, and he is a white person, and he's a cop. So you've got people who are coming out who are who represent the oppressed, the black person in the video, and the civilian that he was. Okay.
So the protests never end.
I think the good thing that's happening here is we're making it a little harder for police to be oppressive.
Yeah, but we're making it a lot harder for a person to run a business in a city.
I agree. And like I said, man, it's scattered. It's definitely scattered. As long as you've got, 2 million different opinions out there trying to express one opinion, it's not going to be perfect. And absolutely,
it's not going to be effective.
It's not going to be effective, right? It's not going to be perfectly effective, at least.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would agree, man. Okay, so we could talk about this for another hour, but I do want to get to the part of like, what can we do to be less oppressed? What can we do to sort of gain our freedom, as you see it?
I don't know if I can say simple things about that. I mean, you have to think for yourself. Definitely, the problem that I see is a lot of people are being used as pawns, and in addition to being used as pawns, they are being sacrificed. Mm-hmm. People are fighting a battle that's not theirs because somebody else has rallied them and convinced them to fight on their behalf. They're fighting another person's battle on their behalf, and they don't even know what they're fighting for. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not really in support of the protests. If they were to hone in and focus and they said, we demand the repeal of qualified immunity, I'm going to be right there behind them, man. I am fully in support of removing qualified immunity. I've been fighting against that for the last 5 years. I hate it. I don't like it. I think it's a major problem in this country.
Okay.
But I don't really hear anybody talking about that much. Focus is important. All right. Here's the problem, right? You have to know what the problem is. Identify the problem, and then let's discuss solutions. What's the problem? The problem is the system. Okay. That's not really a problem. That doesn't make any sense. Specify what is the problem. And then let's talk about a few solutions and discuss, like civil human beings, what the best course of action moving forward is. What's going to make it best for everybody involved.
Okay. So
nobody has that conversation.
But there is an ultimatum here, which I think it's good that we've established that there is an ultimatum. So I agree, we need to identify the problem, we need to ask for change, but at least now the power structure that is knows that if we don't, if they don't give, it's going to be chaos for them. It's not as safe to do your job unless you join in a more fair system.
That's not okay if you don't know what they have to give.
All right. Totally, dude. I completely understand. So, okay. Yeah. So do you have a top 3, or is it just qualified immunity, or what?
To me, I think qualified immunity solves a whole lot of problems.
Yeah.
If not, I mean, I don't know. What's the problem? I'm not the one protesting.
Okay.
So if you come to me with a problem, we can discuss solutions.
Okay. Can you define what is qualified immunity?
Qualified immunity is an immunity that cops enjoy in court. Okay. I'm going to read it off the law site. Qualified immunity is a type of legal immunity. Qualified immunity balances 2 important interests: the need to hold public officials accountable when they exercise power irresponsibly, and the need to shield officials from harassment, distraction, and liability when they perform their duties responsibly. Makes sense. That sounds like a good thing, right?
Good, yeah.
However, in practice, cops get immunity to everything. So they say it's anything except the most gross negligence that hasn't been already established, right? So if it hasn't been done before, then it's not gross negligence, which means that when a cop does something wrong and is sued, then they're going to look at all the details
Okay.
and say, "Oh yeah, you shouldn't have shot this guy." Like, and the cop's going to say, "Oh, I didn't know that this situation I couldn't do that because this guy had a green hat on." And then the judge would be like, "Oh, okay, well, you're innocent this time, but in the future, let it be known on the law that, yeah, the laws apply even if the guy has a green hat on."
Okay.
I might be being
Yeah.
facetious, but those minute details are what gives them immunity to any responsibility.
Right. Yeah. I think we as people are tired of seeing negligent cops who are abusing their power get paid vacations. I think that's what we're all on board with that.
Oh,
I really feel bad for good cops right now. I mean, there are a lot of good cops out there who really love their communities and do want to protect their communities, and I feel bad for them because they're sharing the guilt, like you were saying before. They're sort of sharing the guilt right now. I feel
group
bad
identity.
for non-racist white people. I feel bad for non-criminal black people. We're all kind of feeling the sting of someone else's actions, and that needs to stop. We do need to go on more of an individual basis, and if we can do that, I think we really could band together and hold the guilty people accountable while holding the people who had nothing to do with it. I mean, like, I'm a white person saying, like, I absolutely do not agree with what this other white person was doing. However, I've got, I'm getting criticized for having white privilege and male, privilege and all this stuff, and I don't know. I feel like I'm losing, honestly. And I think a lot of people feel that. So, and anybody, anybody on the other side of either of those who hears me say, I feel like I'm losing, they're like, oh, bullshit. You know what I mean? I don't get credit
Yeah.
for, like, that feeling that I do earnestly have is being, it's being discredited. It's not being taken seriously at all because I have no right to feel like that.
Mm. Okay, so let me summarize it bestly. Okay, to prevent our enslavement. So first of all, I'd say you got to identify as an individual and treat others as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Individuals are innocent or guilty by their own actions, not by the actions of others. Second, focus on the problem. Specify what the problem is, and then be open to a multitude of solutions.
Okay.
Third, consider the other side. Engage. Try to debate. Try to see the other side. You want them to see our way. We want you to see our way. Everybody wants to be heard and understood, but nobody really wants to understand.
Right. You got to give to receive.
Bingo. You got to do both. So those are the 3 tips I would say that would solve a whole lot of the problems that we have in this country right now.
That's great, man. All right. Brian M.F. Burch, thank you for coming on, man. Go check out this book, How to Enslave the Planet. Literally. It's a really good book. Yeah.
I'm MF, happy to be here.
Yeah, good deal, man. All right. Hey, let's do it again.
Rock on, man.
All right.
Take it easy.
Later, brother.